Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to projectCD.Chronicles. As you can see, today there are two new icons on my computer, one for C64 Forever and the other for Amiga Forever. In my opinion, these are both very useful and powerful tools because they incorporate a lot of features. Here you can see Amiga Forever Plus and Commodore 64 Forever Plus Edition. In particular, they come from Cloanto from Amiga Forever, which actually holds most of the rights to the brand, especially thanks to Mike Badalama. If you're interested in this video, we'll be analyzing its strengths and weaknesses and adding some extra information. Stay with me until the end of the video. I bought, let's say, these editions, both Amiga Forever and Commodore 64 Plus, specifically the Plus edition. Basically, I wanted original products, and the reason for that goes back to the 1980s when there was industrial scale piracy. We have to admit, in some ways, that made computers more accessible to the masses, but at the same time, it pretty much destroyed the video game industry and more, especially in Italy. Aside from that, there are definitely contents that, at this point, we can call illegal because officially Cloanto holds the downloadable rights. But I decided to go ahead and make this purchase to get the ROMs again, to get these original ROMs. And I have to say I'm really happy with the product, with how it's made, and with a lot of other little details that, let's say, made me feel like I spent my money well on this purchase. And now, let's take a look at the details. But first, I wanted to say something about the rights. So, before we go any further, we need to clarify something. All right, so let's start with Mike Badalama, owner of Cloanto, and it's important to say that at first the rights, and here I'm talking about Amiga, were held by Commodore Incorporated, but they decided not to renew these rights, and we're talking about the period between 2017 and 2019. At that point, some rights regarding Amiga were acquired by the company Cloanto. On the other hand, when it comes to the Commodore brand, the situation is even more fragmented because, over the years, there have been numerous acquisitions and transfers. As of today, there is a project that seems to want, and here we're talking about nostalgia, to reclaim everything that is the Commodore brand in order to essentially reestablish a new Commodore, but obviously the situation is quite fragmented. Obviously, this is a video where I'm talking about these tools, so to speak, and I won't really dwell on the current situation, which is still evolving and subject to change. Anyway, getting back to us, I was basically looking for the Amiga ROMs for WinUAE, the official ones to be able to start it up and what it asks for as kickstart. And, by the way, I ended up coming across this website. I have to say that when I was very little, yes, I definitely had a Commodore 64, but for me, the Amiga is still something of a mysterious world. So, after looking for various tips, I ended up on the Cloanto Amiga Forever website, because that's exactly where the original ROMs are kept. And to my surprise, because I didn't know this, there's also a section for a small fee for Commodore 64 Forever, which includes, let's say, quite a few products inside, like ROMs and so on, plus a whole series of videos from that era and other period materials, which is honestly nice to have. So first of all, as you can see here, I've already made the two CD-RMS. Obviously, they're really poorly done for now, but I'll print them properly later. This one's for the Commodore and this one's for the Amiga. The reason for this is that, among the various options, you can choose either a value edition, which is basically a digital edition, a plus edition where you also get ISO images with additional material, or a premium edition where they actually burn the CDs for you and then ship them. And in fact, here we have the comparison chart. Basically, well, first one is around $20 and it just includes a Windows installation with some, let's say, ROM 1.3 Workbench environment and so on, while the second one is much more complete. It has more content, let's say, and it also provides the ISO images, as I showed you, and then there are also numerous scenes, galleries, historical material, demo scenes, games, and so on, which have made the history of both Commodore and Amiga. And finally, there's a premium edition, which is an even more substantial edition that includes, beyond 3 DVDs, videos with a lot of other material. Basically, I got this one, I downloaded it, I placed the order, as you can see from the various products. Maybe we'll take a closer look at some of them. Obviously, I have to say that this isn't a sponsored video, so I'm free to say exactly what, let's say, comes to mind and what I've actually found as well, with a few minor difficulties, especially during the download phase, which I'll talk about right away. And then we'll go back to look at the two products, briefly, what's inside them, as you can also see from the various magazines and so on, to spice everything up, in my opinion, into an excellent recipe. So, well, first of all, let's talk about troubleshooting right away. And then, so beyond the purchase, let's go straight to the part where you can register. You're given a license code and you're told that you can make a certain number of downloads. And this license code, let's say, has an expiration date. Obviously, they'll give us a license. Mine is valid until 2035, so I have the rights until I retire. Beyond that, since I haven't actually, the premium edition, because we also have a physical part that gets shipped to us, but we're also allowed to download it. They give us links where we can basically download what are two types of products. MSI installer that works on Windows 7, 8, 10, 11. Works on Relive, but I haven't tried it. And a second edition, in this case the Plus edition, where basically you get an extra ISO with additional material. So let's say beyond the price of the Plus edition, by buying with Amiga, let's say I have. I immediately took advantage of the opportunity to buy this second part as well, because it was included at a modest price, basically the same as the C64 Forever, as you can see. All right, now a tiny problem during the download phase, actually two problems. The first problem was, I downloaded them using Chrome, and obviously that turned out to be impossible. Aside from the fact that it was telling me it would take between 16 and 24 hours, there are 4 downloads, but after a very short time, it kept disconnecting from their servers and constantly trying to reconnect. So the only way, of course, to download them is to use a free download manager that keeps the connection active across multiple connections. At this point, you re-enter the links and just let it run, and you can actually download all the files in a pretty short time. Solutions like Chrome or other browsers I tried absolutely do not work, and every 3 or 4 seconds, or after a minute, the download stops. Even though you can resume the download, it will just stop again a few seconds later. That was one issue. The second problem is that I wrote to them to report this problem of mine regarding this second type of download, and well, I ended up solving it with Free Download Manager. So another 3 or 4 days went by, I received the ticket, but they still haven't replied to me. Basically, I had said that anyway, the way, as far as downloading goes, Chrome was highly impractical. So this is one of the two, let's say, negative aspects. But actually, I found several other positive aspects, and we'll take a look at those at the end with these two products, and we'll launch something. What I want to focus on now is a comparison of the editions to see what each edition includes, and especially to take a closer look at the AP9 title editor. Alright, so it's possible to download in 3 different editions. A value edition, let's say a more affordable one, a more substantial edition, and the final, more comprehensive edition, which is the one I mentioned that includes 3 videos that cover the history of Amiga from Commodore and so on. My choice was the Plus edition because basically I already had the whole package as far as the ROMs and other files go. I also had the 2-scored platform, the DVDs that I then went on to burn, and everything else, as you can see here in this section. As for the gallery videos and the application, there's a whole section dedicated to the gallery of historical items and videos. In this case, though, I only have the videos for the premium edition. If I go here, obviously, yes, there are videos, but first I need to check if they're actually available because they're still the old videos from back in the day. I don't think so, because basically they're only in the premium edition. In fact, if I go to the videos and launch Amiga, it says please insert volume 3FD in any drive because this part clearly isn't available, unlike the magazines or parts of the magazines from back then, which you can actually flip through. But here, I'll make sure to check them out myself later. Anyway, moving on, what does it include? Obviously, we have both the games and the Amiga itself included. Clearly, the two versions, Plus and Premium, are basically the same, except only for the video section. The Value Edition, of course, is 300 and 600 megabytes, and that's correct. And, well, it's also possible to do upgrade pricing. What I was interested in, aside from the videos, anyway, let's say I got it in the Plus Edition, as I told you. Uh, let's see. There's nothing here. I'll show you later. Inside here, there's Mike Batalama. By the way, I was looking at HK4 Android, which I had skipped in my opinion because I wasn't interested. And let's say he allows Amiga Forever Essentials for Android to install official system ROMs, files, OS versions. And then we also have some demos included anyway. Amiga Forever Essentials unlocks the potential of Amiga emulation in apps designed for Android. All right, and this can be used, let's say, in products. What I wanted to show you, here it is. Basically, it's this. It's their internal format, which is the RP9 tile editor, and then we can see it in action for both products. What do we see? This RP9 is a file format that stores multimedia images, ADF D64, along with the title description and configuration, all in a single compressed file ready to run with one click. RP9 can also include additional files such as graphics, audio, and documentation. Basically, it's a tool that they use internally, and it integrates with these two tools that they provide us. As we've seen in this case, it creates a descriptive part, an image part, a sound and SID part, or even a games part. As you can see, this tool is really comprehensive because it allows us to package programs so we can provide descriptions, the ID, the product, the year of publication, and as you can see here, it's very complex. By the way, here you could see what the ROM was, and here is a preview image of what I clicked on, which contains, so to speak, Computer Magic Magazine Part 1. Well, what else can I say to manually create a single package? Anyway, here it tells you exactly how to do it. It's a feature they have internally, and as I was saying, you can interact through these two tools because when I installed Amiga Forever, it automatically checked the CBN file system and so on. By the way, I'm recording here, but if I go, for example, into the Cloanto folder, it goes through all these different folders, especially in Amiga Forever. Here too, we've installed WinUAE, and then we'll have the various plugins with the different ROMs and so on. For example, here in the Amiga files, we have all the various IDRFs, the tstart files, all the different ROMs that are included, the various workbenches as I mentioned, and a lot of other material, obviously original, that's clear in this context. However, this collection, for example, has saved me a lot of time because I have all the material already configured and ready to use. And especially for someone like me who never actually owned an Amiga, it definitely made using it much easier. Let's also take a look at some details in action. Let's start with the Commodore 64. Obviously, it should be said that both of these tools use, for the Commodore 64, they use Vice, and for the Amiga, they use WinUAE, nothing more, nothing less. In particular, when these tools are launched, what gets started is a special version of the Commodore 64, obviously fully usable. It's a slightly modified version of Vice, but even inside, you can definitely launch what is essentially a counterpart of Vice. And, well, the nice thing is that beyond everything, it's really cool, also in how it's configured, from the various colors to the palettes. All of them are launched with their respective ROMs, including the various types of Amiga that we'll take a look at. Here too, for example, we choose the Amiga 1000. By the way, I had disabled what was basically the flappy loading noise. This is still an Amiga 1000 version with the Workbench. You can see that with the ROM and Workbench, it's loading in this case. We'll let it load, then I'll learn how to use it anyway, no doubt, since I don't know how yet, but there's also the WinAway version available where you can connect to all the different ROMs and so on. I'll close this here because, obviously, when it comes to the Amiga, I'd rather come back to it later, and it's worth noting, both for the Commodore 64 and Amiga Forever in a more detailed section, for example, as I was saying, the RP9. In this case, let's take Athena as an example. There are all these packaged RP9 files where, as I was saying, the publisher is provided and, well, in this case, the rating, which you can set, and various information about the product. Exactly what I was talking to you about earlier regarding the RP9. So if we have a product, let's say Zorgas comes to mind, I can add the info with the image, and then I can insert it here inside. The procedure is very simple. I still obviously need to see exactly how to use it, and then, once it's, so to speak, packaged, what comes to mind are Debian packages. It's still possible, let's say, to launch it. Now, the first one that comes to mind is Pac-Mania. I can launch Pac-Man and it starts up a pre-configured emulator. Run in unlimited lives for player, yes, and here it tells me number of starting level 0. Obviously, then you have to configure the keys, the emulator, the keyboard, the various ports, empty mouse, joystick, switch, and as you can see, it's a full-fledged emulator with some, let's say, additional features that I'll obviously take a closer look at later. Because here, for example, you have to move around with the mouse or with the joystick, which I haven't configured yet, but it's just to show you how easy these tools are to use, save snapshot, pause, configure, and of course the sound, which you can just hear through the headphones, and so on. If I happen to find comments at the end of the video, maybe we can also take a closer look at these types of emulators. By the way, here we have the emulated port, mouse, and anyway, you need to take a closer look at this. Tape drive Pac-Mania is a type, well, it's a T64, and joystick via keyboard cursor key, right control to fire. Alright, let's keep moving pretty quickly because here we have, let's say, the whole presentation of the demo scene, both for the Commodore and also the demo scenes for the Amiga. Maybe we can try launching this kind of animation where it loads up, and let's see what comes out. 3D demo by 8Kill Design Production. This program must not be sold by any PD companies. Well, this is some exceptional graphics. Sure, the Amiga had outstanding graphics, but this was really, truly cutting edge, even by today's standards, no doubt about it. Now I think it's loading something here. I can't quite make it out, but it's really beautiful. I hope you burn with us. Okay, aside from the snapshots, let's go back. Let's switch. Then we have a series of applications, terminal-based ones, and here actually we have the gallery, which I'm not sure what the gallery is. Oh, right, the magazines. In this case, there are quite a few magazines and also a series of videos, but these videos are still available. No, these videos, as I mentioned earlier, for the Commodore Plus Edition and the other one are not available. We can continue our discussion regarding the systems. As I mentioned, there are the various Amiga machines, including the Amiga 4 Enhanced Edition, and we also have the version with AROS. I want to see if here 2025 ROS download, maybe here it actually lets me download it. I'll check that right away. And then we have the various other machines here, always configured with, so to speak, the Commodore machines. Let's take a look. Let's double click Application Download in Progress. As I was saying, it can also download AROS, but it needs to do the download itself. We'll let it do that and then come back to it at the end, but I see it's pretty quick. Application download in progress. Maybe we'll just let it finish, and if it takes too long, we can always cut the video later. Application extraction in progress. The application has been downloaded successfully. Ready? Let's launch it. And here too it should basically start up a version with AMOS. Sorry, with AROS. That's it. Here as well, it's an operating system for Amiga. Great, really, really nice. Here, I just launched the actual Vice from this side, and the tool launch plugin went away as I was telling you. The Commodore 128, as you can see, in addition to the emulator section I mentioned earlier, also has all the actual Vice emulators. What's the difference? This is a real Vice, while the one I'm about to launch here, the emulator in this case, basically requires the presence of a file. And here we can see it, IP9 toolbox in this case, which, as I was saying, you can use to then pass it inside. And it's a bit more complete, let's say. Obviously, we've only touched the surface of what this tool can do, because as you can see here, it's quite complex. Beyond just being able to add files, we have the ability to view various products depending on the columns we select. And then there are a whole series of other tools I still need to check out, like Build Image, ROM Toolbox, Disk Toolbox, and even the Download Gain Mode machine, which lets you directly view and download from all these other sites, for example from GainBase and so on. So let's say it's really, really complete. Well, what else can I say? I'll definitely be talking more about Commodore 64 Forever Plus Edition, Amiga Forever Plus Edition, and also about how to use and configure them. So, what else can I say? I'm satisfied to have obtained and legally purchased these products, and that's pretty much it. I'll see you on Project CD.Chronicles for a new video about the Commodore 64, and now also about the Amiga. Thank you all for sticking with me up to this point. See you next time. Bye.